and how students learn everything they know. Okay.
Okay, I'm Miss Wright.
And I'm Mrs. Ekman. We're the school counselors here.
All right. What do you think of standardized tests?
Well, yeah.
I'm in favor of them, but I think there's some issues that should be resolved, and I don't think they are appropriate for all students.
I will say I'm in favor of standardized tests to a certain point. I realize there needs to be some measure to test students' knowledge of grasping information that they are being taught. However, I don't feel that there's a lot of equity in the tests themselves. And I think students that are challenged in learning, I think they're at a disadvantage when it comes to some of these standardized tests.
Like special needs kids?
Or students that learn differently than the general population. I think they're at a disadvantage because there's not differentiation within those tests.
So
That doesn't mean that I mean dummy the test down though. There's a difference between differentiation as opposed to dumbing a test down.
Right. Do you think that standardized tests interfere with the learning process?
Which, now be specific when you're talking about standardized tests. Are you talking about SATs, or are you talking specific standardized tests moving from that fourth to eighth grade, or which standardized tests are you talking about? Be a little more, can you be a little more specific?
I guess we can say SATs or just state exams in general.
Well, from my perspective, I think nowadays, the educational system is looking more at our students like numbers as opposed to students and whole student in particular. And students aren't numbers.
As far as New York State assessments?
Right,
Yeah,
New York State assessments.
I would agree.
Students aren't numbers. They're living, eating, breathing individuals.
Yeah. I would say those New York State assessments that are given in grades 3 through 8 may not be an accurate reflection at all of what the students' capabilities are. As far as SATs go, I don't think they interfere with the learning process unless students get so anxious about them that their scores are lower because they just don't do well on a test.
All right.
I agree with that.
What do you believe that students could do to improve test scores?
First and foremost, students need to come to school. For those students that have attendance issues, also do their homework. And I say that because it is a problem with many students. And the new SAT specifically has free, they're partnering with Khan Academy for a lot of online study tools. I'm not familiar with that as much, but nationally, Khan Academy has been known to be very, very good in helping students. And I also think, as much reviewing and test prep without having to go to one of the big, expensive learning centers, I don't think that would be necessary.
Right. And we even provide the students here with test prep, courses yes. As well as books from our own specific office to help students prepare for the SAT or the ACT, even if it's just the subject test. We do provide that information, for students to help them prepare for those tests.
And the ACT
So would you say that teaching to the test is not the most effective way of teaching?
No.
Certainly not, because you don't always know what the test questions are going to be, and it does not do the students any service. It doesn't teach them the critical thinking skills to be able to answer any questions on any standardized test or other test.
Right.
Yeah.
Not to mention, students shouldn't just study what is exactly on a test, because later on in life, it doesn't teach them how to be critical thinkers.
Right.
It doesn't teach them to look at a broader spectrum of things that are going on in life.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to know a fuller span, or a larger span, excuse me. They
Right.
need to know a larger span of different aspects of what's going on in life.
Yeah, at the end of the day, what I want for my students and the students that, any student, is exactly what I'd want for my own kids. And that's not how high their test score is or state assessment score. It's really that they have the knowledge and the confidence to know they can go out into the world with all that knowledge.
A well-roundedness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Roundedness.
Yes.
Can you say anything good about standardized tests?
That good about them.
I don't know that I necessarily, I'm kind of on the fence about testing in general, especially this day and age. Our students, regardless of where they're at in their 13 years of their track, regardless of where they're at, our students come with a lot more environmental stressors, educational stressors. So students have a lot of anxiety when it comes to testing, and a student might be able to excel highly in the classroom,
Right.
Making choices and decisions, and they may be able to verbally pass a verbal test, but when they get into a classroom setting with regard to being able to pass a test that is written, where they have to focus,
Right.
they may not be able to do that. They could just be poor test takers. So then a child will be penalized because they didn't do well on a test.
And this brings me to the last question. Do you agree with this statement? Why are teachers told to differentiate their instruction but standardize their tests?
I do agree with it. I think it can sound a little convoluted, but I think it goes back to what we were saying before. There's different learners that sometimes they have different styles of learning. So if the teacher recognizes that, and really they have to build that into the way they teach, then ultimately the test should be standard, and the idea would be that all students have learned the same things because the teacher individualized it and differentiated, meaning, it's different for each student to match their learning style, and get feedback from the student and have the student participate, not just the teacher standing there and teaching. And then hopefully the test would be standard and everybody would know the same material.
I find fault with that statement because in actuality it says one thing, but it did really mean something else, because even though they want differentiation, I still think that the underlying message is they still want everybody to be robotic and still do the same thing, because they're still telling teachers and educators that they still need to follow this regimen. They need to do it this way, and this way, and this way. But then they try to somehow
Right.
flip it. They want differentiation. However,
I see.
the underlying message still is the same.
Yeah.
Do it this way.
I see that point, because then the standardized test does not recognize the differences in how students
It
learned,
doesn't.
or really everything they know. So there's both. I see both.
Kelly Monaco, English teacher at Leonardo da Vinci, educator for 24 years.
All right. What do you think of standardized tests?
I don't like standardized tests because kids aren't standardized. Everyone's different. A lot of kids have test anxiety, and will just never do well on a standardized test. And so if there's other ways to gauge learning besides standardized tests.
So you would say that teaching to the test is not the most effective way of teaching?
No, definitely not.
And do you think students should be required to take the SAT?
No, I think, again, that standardized tests are not good for every student. Some students will take the SATs 3 and 4 times and not do well on the SAT. That doesn't mean that they're not going to do well in college. So I don't think that it's a great indicator of success in the future.
So you would agree that standardized tests interfere with the learning process?
Yes. I think too much time is spent teaching to the test. Not enough with creativity.
What do you believe that students could do to improve test scores?
That students can do to improve their test scores?
Yes.
Maybe the kids who do have test anxiety could use relaxation techniques. But I don't know that there's that much beyond, of course, studying and preparing. And by studying, I mean every night sitting down and reviewing the notes from that day. Not just studying for a test and then forgetting that material after. But beyond that, as long as the student is doing what they're supposed to do, I don't think that there's anything magical that they can do differently.
Can you say anything good about standardized tests?
Can I say anything good about standardized tests? Honestly, no. No.
Do you agree with this statement? Why are teachers told to differentiate their instruction but standardize their tests?
And you want me to...
Do you agree or disagree?
Well, I agree with the statement because we are told to differentiate our instruction, but yet everyone takes the exact same test. And with this district and with the state, with New York State, everyone is expected to do well on one test or one assessment. And there are students that will never pass a New York State Regents. And what we're doing is we're not giving them the opportunity to graduate high school with a high school diploma. There are other ways, there's other certificates, but not with an actual high school diploma. And these are students that might not be able to pass a New York State Regents exam, but would do very well in a vocational program, welding, plumbing, electrician. And we're not giving the kids that opportunity. We're saying everyone has to be college ready. So we're doing a real disservice to kids.
Question. If there could be a replacement for standardized tests, what would you suggest?
I believe that teachers should be treated as the professionals that they are. And I think that teachers should be given the professional courtesy to create their own tests based on their curriculum, based on the students that are sitting in front of them in any given year. That could change year to year, could change classroom to classroom. But I think the teachers are the best judge of what their students are capable of doing. And the problem is we're not trusted to create the assessments for our students. We're getting these outside companies to create these assessments, and these people don't know our students. So it's completely unfair, and really I think it comes down to giving the teachers back the trust that we deserve as professionals, as people who have bachelor's degrees and master's degrees and beyond, professional development beyond that, and give us the courtesy that we can do this, that we're very capable of creating tests that will assess the skills that we want our students to have.